Well, it's a beautiful day for a ride, and we're looking at the new Trek FX Plus 2, and this is the Stagger frame. I call these mid-step because you don't quite have that wave, really low standover, but you've still got a much more approachable frame. They sell this in 3 frame sizes and 3 colors, as well as a high step in 4 frame sizes and 3 colors. Pretty phenomenal. This is $24.99, and for a bike from a big company like Trek that has dealers all across the United States and Canada, a lot of times you'll get an electric bike, you tend to ride it a little bit more than a traditional acoustic bike, and that means having a shop that can keep your wheels trued, replace your tires if you get a flat, or just give you those tune-ups. It's really part of what you're paying for with a slightly higher price point. And the reason I'm calling this out is because Trek, the parent company, they also own Electra, and Electra has a couple of cruiser models that are priced a little bit lower. They're a bit more relaxed, and they don't necessarily have all the fenders and racks and everything. They do sell those as options, but this thing is feature complete. I mean, it's got integrated lights, front and rear. It's all set up for commuting, and I just feel like it's really good quality. And looking at this thing, it kind of blends in almost like in a traditional bicycle. The battery is right there in the down tube, low and center on the frame. The motor, it's just a little hub motor back here, high drive, 250 watts, and it's hidden pretty well behind this 9-speed drivetrain. Pretty impressive. It also has hydraulic disc brakes. So these are some of the highlights. As I was studying this bike and I was looking at, you know, the measurement of the handlebars and everything, the stem, even the crank arms, I noticed that they are proportional to the frame size that you get. So I'm on the medium size frame here, and if I were to go to a larger frame, these would go from 170 to 175, and the handlebar would go a little bit wider, I think 660 to 690. So the fit is really quite good, and I appreciate that as someone who does ride frequently. Maybe you're someone who's commuting to work or whatever. The drawbacks on this bike are that, you know, it's a rigid fork here, and we have these more efficient wheels and tires. So these are 700 by 40C. They're not quite road bike narrow, but they're not these big cruiser, you know, comfort balloon tires either. So they're efficient, they're lighter weight, but you just don't have that suspension feeling and that comfort. Now, you could always replace this rigid 31.6 millimeter seat post with a suspension post, but that's going to raise the minimum saddle height. And for the Stagger frame that's so approachable, I guess these are just some of the trade-offs and something you could consider when looking at some of the other electric bikes from Trek. They tend to have higher capacity batteries, maybe a little bit more comfort options, the bigger tires and stuff that I was talking about. But all in all, for $24.99 USD, I'm still pretty impressed. So I just want to jump into this and hit some of the technical specs that I noticed here. So it's a rigid fork, as we talked about, 100 millimeter hub spacing, and it has a 5 millimeter hex bolt that's securing that front wheel. It does not have quick release, but it's still a 9 millimeter axle. Maybe it's possible you could swap this for quick release, but I suppose they did that just to make it extra secure. So if you are commuting, you know, you don't even have quick release here for the seat clamp, so people can't tamper with it as easily at the bike rack. In the rear, this is actually a little bit wider. I think it's like 144.5 millimeter hub spacing, probably to fit the hub motor and then that 9-speed cassette that I was talking about. I was very impressed with this because it's 11 to 36 tooth. That's a great spread. Sometimes you'll see 14 to 28 or 11 to 32. So 11 to 36, that's great. It just means you have a bunch more cadence options, and you can pedal beyond the maximum assisted speed here, which is 20 miles per hour, 25 kilometers per hour in Europe. Shimano Altus, that's one step up from the base level. Pretty good for a bike like this. And the trigger shifters up here, you got the optical window readout and the triggers. I would prefer if these were two-way levers on the high lever. It's a minor gripe. It's just, this isn't the highest level part from Shimano, but still does a really good job. And I prefer trigger shifters over the grip shifters because they actuate a little faster. They're kind of snappier. Love the ergonomic locking grips. That does improve comfort a little bit. And look at this, we got a few spacers here. So there's a 20 millimeter and a 10 millimeter, and then this stem, since they're using traditional hardware with 31.8 millimeter bar clamp, you could always get a shorter stem or a taller stem or even adjustable angle, and you can mess with these spacers. You can do a lot with this, and I'm seeing more and more proprietary e-bikes where you spend more and then you're kind of locked into the configuration that they give you. So I like that this is fairly open source, as it were, but they're still doing some internal cable routing. You can see that with the cables right down through this kind of burlier steer tube right here, but then all those wires, they run through the frame. They look so nice, and then they extrude back here for the motor power cable. On the left-hand side of the bike, tucked in perfectly between the frame and the disc brake rotor. And then we have these ProMax hydraulic disc brakes, dual piston calipers, 160 millimeter rotors. Not the largest rotors in the world, but for a little city bike like this, I think that's fine. Hydraulic brake levers with adjustable reach, so if you have smaller hands, you can bring them in or leave them out if you're on one of the larger frame sizes. And again, I think a lot of the specs and stuff that I'm going over, they're going to apply for the standard FX Plus 2 non-stagger frame. It's just something I might review separately in the future. One thing I noticed on the Trek website is that they said these would be Shimano brakes, but they say ProMax. I've noticed a lot of e-bike manufacturers are substituting parts just because of supply chain constraints and limitations. These are still working really, really well for me. I haven't had any problem. I love this rear rack. It offers 25 kilograms of weight capacity, and it's MIK compatible for some of these little clip-on accessories. 25 kilograms, that's 55 pounds. So I just feel like you could load this up, whether it's a trunk bag on top or panniers. They've even got the little bungee loop at the bottom. I love to see that because I've seen some other bikes that have lower weight capacity, and if you got an e-bike, you got the power and the battery. It's nice to be able to haul your stuff to work. You've got the Spanninga Solo integrated light on the rear here, and this is a single LED light, so it could be a little nicer, but it's still positioned really well. And then the SKS plastic fenders that feel very solid. Sometimes plastic buzzes, you can hear that a little bit, but actually during my ride tests, it's been pretty quiet. It feels pretty solid. They're very narrow. They aren't adding a lot of weight, and there's enough clearance on the front. I haven't been kicking this while I'm pedaling. They've got these bosses that mounts directly to the lowers of the fork. It's just nicely done, just much more professional, and I appreciate that. The bike itself, with everything on it, as you see here, it weighs 40 pounds. I had to weigh it twice because I was like, 40 pounds, that's really light for an electric bike. Now keep in mind, again, this is a 36 volt, 7 amp hour, 250 watt hour battery pack. It's not the largest in the world, and it's not removable, except for like replacement. You can kind of drop the bottom bracket down here and get it out if you really need to. But it's really just fixed to the bike. And that's one of the trade-offs here, because it means you need to get the bike close enough to a charging outlet to fill the battery. And of course, the range is going to be somewhat limited. So let's imagine you ride this to work and you're draining that battery all the way down. They estimate like 35 miles per charge. And of course, it depends on the assist level, the terrain, your weight, the tire pressure, all that. So let's say you get to work and you're like, okay, I want to charge this. Well, you can't take the battery off. You need a charging port near the bike rack, which I don't see that a lot of times. And so it's kind of a bummer. However, they do sell an optional range extender, another 250 watt hour pack that like bolts to this top tube right here. So you spend a little bit more money, double your range, maybe get up to 70 miles. It's kind of what they say on the website. And it's got a nice little, plug, and it connects right here to this port. So it looks nice and it keeps that weight low, but having a removable battery is one of the nice things about some of the other Trek models and other e-bikes out there. It's one of the big trade-offs here. But apparently the battery itself is only 5 pounds. So back to that super lightweight design. And then the motor, as I mentioned, 250 watts, and it's 40 Newton meters of torque. It's just lightweight, compact, fairly quiet. And they're using like a combined torque and cadence sensor on this. So it's fairly responsive. Though I must say, there are times where I was like, starting on a hill and I was like really pushing, and I was like, where's that torque sensor when I need it? And after a little bit of rotation, then it kicked in. So it does seem to rely a little bit more on cadence. A couple times I also just stopped putting much torque, but I kept moving my cranks and it kept giving me power. So I feel like they're leaning a little bit more on cadence. Still nice that they're giving you something that's a little bit more advanced than just cadence sensing. From this angle, you can see the quick disconnect for the motor power cable on the other side. 42 tooth steel chainring, narrow wide, so it's actually going to grab that chain and keep it from dropping off quite as easily. Plastic guard on the outside to protect your pants or dress, and maybe the bottom bracket a little bit. It's nice to have. And then we've got this plastic chain cover, again, to keep your pants or dress clean. And it's got a steel connector. Everything else on the bike is aluminum alloy. This one piece here appears to be steel. I mentioned the aluminum alloy crank arms, these Bontrager pedals, plastic with these little nubs. They feel a little weird to me, but you know, that's good for all kinds of different shoes. It gives you a good size platform, fairly stiff. And then I already mentioned the drivetrain back here. They do have a slap guard, a clear sticker slap guard. It's going to protect the paint, which I really appreciate. I love the bottle cage bosses, although they could be taken up if you get that optional range extending battery pack too. And then this saddle here, fairly comfortable, but apparently it's women specific. So this Stagger model, I think it is designed to be kind of like a hers, you know, like the him and hers. They got the high step, they got the step through. They have like a blue one, which to me is, you know, I'd feel comfortable riding this around. And as someone with like hip or knee sensitivity, these frames, the mid steps or the step throughs, they can be more approachable. So I was surprised that they went with women specific. It's not expensive or difficult to replace the saddle if you don't like it. And if you're a guy and you just want that more approachable frame, I just thought I'd give you the heads up. The other thing I really like about this bike is where they position the headlight. And you'll notice it's got side cutouts, so it's high, it points where you steer. It's not getting crowded up here because the display is so simple, and it's not down here, it's not bouncing around, it's aimable. I really like this headlight. And then again, the rear light with just one LED, but we also have reflective sidewall stripes on these tires. So these are H2 comp, again, Bontrager. It's a Trek brand, so it's kind of like Electra as part of Trek. Well, so is Bontrager, and I always struggle to pronounce this. If someone wants to spell it out in the comments, I'd appreciate it. And I guess the last thing here is the charger. Weighs just 1.3 pounds, and it's 2 amps, so it's fairly standard, 42 volt. It's got a proprietary plug interface. Charging port is very convenient for that optional second battery, but it's a little bit, you know, let's say we plug this in like this. Well, now, you know, it's sort of in the way of that crank arm a little bit. It just gets a little crowded and you have to bend down, and the way that it's set up with the cord coming out the left, I prefer approaching the bike from the other side of the frame because the bike tips towards the left, and it's trade-off of where you got to park this thing to where you can charge it. I should mention, you want to store these lithium-ion battery products in a cool, dry location and keep it between like 20 and 80% to maximize the number of full charge cycles you'll get. So, you know, again, good luck with that. My mom, you know, she's enjoyed cycling with me over the years, and she's always like, I just want a lightweight bike. I want to feel like I'm in control. And for me, a bike with all the features, fenders, the racks, the lights, that's 40 pounds. I just can't get over that. I'm really impressed. And then the kickstand down here, at first I was really excited because it's got a tool-free adjustable length setup here where you just click this open and then you can slide it up and down. But what I've noticed is that it can fairly easily, like if you push down on the bike a couple times, it was actually coming undone and sliding up. And maybe it's because I had it at the tallest setting, but I hope Trek pays attention to that. You could always replace this with any other aftermarket kickstand that has the 18mm bolt spacing. So we get ready to ride here. We just press that power button for a couple seconds, and then the LEDs come to life. There are 5 bars for the battery charge level, and that's 20% increments, so it's not super precise. It'd be nice if there were 10, or like a display with an actual percentage readout would be ideal. And then there's 3 levels of assist, so if we press plus, we go from no assist to 1, 2, and 3. If you hold the plus button, let's see if, oh, the lights are already on, but holding the plus button will turn the lights off or on. And again, pretty nice. I like the light that they chose for the headlight. And if we hold the minus button for a couple seconds, you'll see the red LEDs start to walk like that. Then if we hold plus, we'll get walk mode going. So it's a 2-step thing, and it takes a minute to activate. There we go. I wish that I could tell if there was puncture protection on these tires. It's just a nice extra thing to have so you don't end up with a flat tire. Do keep them between the recommended PSI. I think it's, you know, 55 to 85, so a little bit more full. These are definitely more efficient than comfort oriented. Okay, with that said, let's take a little ride here. Let's go ahead and start off. Yeah, I was definitely pedaling for it to kick in. I was pushing. Now let's try this again. So I'm at complete standstill. I'm gonna pedal forward and we'll try to get that assist to kick in. Yeah, it's like a quarter or half a rotation before it goes. With a true torque sensor, it feels more like immediate. So I'm gonna try this again. I'm gonna put a lot of pressure down. Yeah, so it's really a combination setup more than like pure torque. A little bit jarring off-road like this. But you can see that it's really a quiet bike. Those fenders don't rattle around. The rack is really solid and secure. I like that. Here we go. Let's activate that headlight. Oh, yeah, nice. You can see it's got that top cutoff pattern, which is, I think it's designed to not shine up into the face of like drivers or other cyclists. And there's that rear light. It must have some light pipe kind of splits down like this. Fairly visible. Very nice. I'm gonna put those brakes to the test here, going down a pretty steep dirt section. Nice. Feeling good. And then really smooth and quiet on the pavement here. That's really where this bike is most at home. We got a little hill, so even in the second level of assist, doing fine. Yeah, I've taken it all the way up, and I'm at a stop sign. It's a good idea to kind of shift down, because as I was saying, it still doesn't catch right away, like the motor didn't catch on. So, you know, I would have to stand up or get some momentum. There it is. As someone with sensitive knees, you just got to plan for it by shifting. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Yeah, looks like you did a great job. So I'm on a flat section here. The bike can really fly. It's just so efficient, especially with the higher tire pressure here. But one thing I noticed is without an LCD display, you can't tell how fast you're going. And of course, there's no range estimate or max speed or odometer. You've just got these dots over here. And there's no USB charging ports or anything. So you can't really charge any portable electronics, like if you're using a phone for GPS or anything. It's nice that it's so open and clean, but you're just a little bit more limited on the readouts. So I'm gonna go ahead and get up to that max speed real quick here. There we go. A lot of gears, a lot of cadence options, which is great for active riding. Much more comfortable. That's about it. Really quiet. It's kind of an upright / forward body position, you know, more active than those cruisers. So the benefit of a hub motor like this is it's a little bit lighter and more affordable than a mid-drive, but it's going to be less efficient, and you're not going to get the same high-level torque based on the gear that you choose. You're always just in the gear ratio of the motor to the wheel itself. Well guys, that is the Trek FX Plus 2 Stagger. For the full written review and all the details I've measured by hand, check out ElectricBikeReview.com. There's also comparison tools, so you could look at some of those Electra models that also use the high drive, or some of the fancier Trek models as well. And there's a forum, so you can talk to people about the best accessories and what they really think. I mean, I'm doing a free review here, just having fun, but I've only had the bike for a couple days, and it's nice to see kind of the long term and what people have to say about that. So I love you, ride safe, and we'll see you next time.